How are you?
Good, good.
Is Tanajan there?
สวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีค่ะอาจารย์
Tanajan.
สวัสดีครับ
สวัสดีครับท่านอาจารย์
Please start.
Shall we start?
Yes, go ahead, Nina, if you're ready.
Yeah, well, I was thinking of a very good advice from Ajahn, and I repeated it to family members, that it's really one's own thinking that is the cause of all problems, not what others are doing or saying. And they seem to understand this a little, because when I talk about the problems with my sister's daughter, about her marriage, that it is her own thinking, and they seem to understand a little more about that, which is good. But you know, there are really very many degrees of understanding, hearing. This is just a Dhamma, it's just a Dhamma. We can repeat the words, but there are degrees of understanding this more deeply. It depends on the level of understanding. And maybe I think that is, if Ajahn can elaborate a little more about it, is just a Dhamma that can be helpful for all of us.
I think that the understanding of the truth of reality right now has to be developed until it's so firm by hearing and considering, not more to do. Just understand the way it is. And then later on, there can be more understanding of no one and nothing at all. At this very moment of seeing, it's time for conditions, whether it is ready to condition the understanding at what level, but it's there all the time. So it's not the matter of trying or hurrying to understand, because the ignorance has been accumulated enormously uncountable. So only understanding at its level that it is there now to be known, to be realized, to understand the truth of it, because there is the understanding of seeing or whatever is there from the very beginning, but that is no one and nothing at all. But as long as the idea of self is there accumulated, it cannot be suddenly letting go the idea of self, but learning more, understand more naturally. And that is the way. The path to realize the truth has to be this very moment, because even there is the understanding of seeing as no one at all. It's that which arises and experience an object, not enough yet, according to the enormous accumulation of ignorance and attachment. That's right, let it go, not I try or I can do, but it is developing even right now, gradually, unknowingly, because the path is so very subtle too. To understand the truth, it is not there everlasting. It's just at moment of seeing, and then thinking, carry on, thinking about how what the object is and so on. But in truth, just thinking about that which is not there anymore. This is the way to gradually let go the idea of self. Just face it, because it's there already. Be brave enough to not just cling to it without any understanding, but to understand that even clinging is there by conditions. Just a reality which clings. Whatever is there is just a reality which performs its function right then. No one there at all. It's quite a long, long way, but it's so true that it can be realized, not by I, but by having more understanding of the truth, that's all.
Ajahn,
within
your words are very deep, and I realize it's very hard when I talk to my family members about seeing that it doesn't mean anything to them.
just tell them whether it's true or not. That's what the beginning of understanding. No one can say that it's not me because it has been I for how long. But to understand the truth, what is there which sees? It is conditioned to arise. Without the I base, without that which impinges on it, how can there be moment of seeing? So what is there? That which can experience the object, that which can experience the object, only that, no matter what object is, sound, smell, taste, or whatever, it's there appearing because of that reality, which experience. No need to let them believe in the beginning, but to understand whether it's true or not. That's all. Just to understand the truth. No one can force anyone to see the benefit of understanding the truth in the very beginning, because it depends on each accumulation, how much interest, how much seeing the benefit of not understanding what is there in life, birth and death, sickness and pleasantness. It's there all the time by conditions. By conditions. Let them think about that from very beginning, because we cannot understand how much the accumulation of self or no satya, no interest in understanding the truth. That's why only those who have accumulation to be interested in whatever is there, to understand the truth, just to understand the truth. Tell them that just to understand what is true, that's all. Because that is the function of right understanding to develop little by little from being truthful, satya, to the truth. Is it better to understand what is there or just no understanding at all in life until death? But understanding doesn't hurt at all because it's now. And when we talk about the truth is much better than a lie. See? That's all. Just that's all. And learn to develop little by little of the understanding of the truth so that it can perform its function better and better, to let go the clinging very gradually. So very, very short moment. But without that short moment, it cannot develop on and on. And it's not easy at all to understand what Buddha said is this very moment. But there must be the way from being truthful to the truth, to understand the truth, that's all. Because how long? Eons and eons, uncountable moments accumulated the idea of something, especially that which experiences. No one there. But it is moment of experiencing an object. So when it's no one, it's me. That's the way it is. Ignorance, condition, attachment, and wrong understanding, taking that for I or thing. That's the way it is. Just develop the right understanding. That's all. And let it perform its function at moment when it understand more and more and more, little more, little by little. Even right now, there is the understanding of the characteristic of our reality, which arises and experience different objects, many, many objects. But still, it's only understanding intellectually until it's strong enough to condition moment of right understanding directly with awareness. By conditions, that's all. More or less by conditions.
Yes. Yeah, very, very good by conditions, so that they know no use trying. It depends on the panya. And then very slowly we have to help people to understand that.
Just understand the truth, that's all. For anyone. whether they think that it's different from this, what is that? See, when we talk about the truth of whatever is there, anybody can understand it so true because they is seeing right now without conditions. How can it arise? And it's not only seeing, because the other moment of hearing and thinking is different from seeing. Different reality, different moments. Even they can experience the object, but they are different. So we are
And it
talking
is,
about the truth of what is there now appearing. That's all.
and it is just the same now, like now when there is thinking about our family members or their problems, then it is just the thinking that is the issue and the reality at this moment. We think there are different family members who have different problems, but it's just the fantasy, the dream at this moment. So it's just the thinking now, which is conditioned and falls away. And when there's no thinking about them, where are the problems? And it's the same for the mother and the other members when thinking about the daughter and worrying. It's the same as it is now for us. It's just the thinking about the different realities.
Yes.
And the worry is just at those moments when there's no thinking about the daughter and her difficulties. When one's carried away by attachment for this or that, then there are no problems with regard to the worry. So it does always come back to this moment. And I think the more understanding there is now that whatever arises is conditioned, the more confidence there is. And when we speak to others, it's easier to help because there is a confidence that what is true is just the understanding at this very moment. So it always comes back to this moment and the helping others to appreciate that life is just at this moment too.
You are right, because when there is more confidence, by conditions, it is easier to help others. It's a good point.
I think this came up in the discussion last week when there was a discussion at the end. I think May brought up the point about control, and Ajahn was stressing it's only through understanding the reality right now at this moment. Yes. And understanding a little more how the reality now is conditioned, that confidence will become firmer and firmer and firmer, and the understanding of anatta becomes firmer and firmer. And so when one talks to others, it's more apparent that it really is the truth one's talking about. So it all, no matter one's helping others or no matter whether they have interest or no interest, it's still just about the understanding of what is real, what appears right now, that is the only way the confidence will develop and solve all the problems in life.
Yeah, for ourselves and others, and
just the same.
Little by little, it's good. Yeah, a good point.
They have to develop together, and then there are fewer and fewer questions. But how can I help? Or how can I do this? Or what about if there isn't enough understanding? Or why is it so difficult? Because all of these questions indicate the lack of the firm confidence that has to develop more and more and more with understanding, little by little.
Yeah.
So Sarah, you mean the understanding that kusala is kusala, it's good for oneself, it's good for others. Akusala is akusala, bad for oneself, bad for others.
And I think more than that, the coming back to the point that Nina mentioned about the fact that they are just dhammas. So of course there's going to be worry, of course there's going to be disturbance, of course there's going to be attachment, but they are just different realities that arise for a moment and then are gone. Whatever arises is gone. So no point fussing or regretting what has gone because it's all gone. So just understanding a little more that whatever arises is Dhamma, is not does not belong to someone. It's not my worry that's so important, or my attachment that's such a problem. They're just different dharmas that arise and fall away that don't belong to anyone at all.
So what you're saying is that so long as there's no understanding, and understanding what appears now, then regardless of what the Chitta Cetasika is, it's not useful compared to understanding. So at any moment, what's called for is understanding what's appearing now.
It always comes back to now. No matter it's the difficult situation of helping others, or no matter we're here or there, or no matter with COVID or not with COVID or anything else, it's always back to the reality at this moment, the seeing, the hearing, because it's only through the understanding of life at this very moment that the confidence will develop, and it will become more apparent how to share with others or how to cope in any situation at any time. So confidence can only develop with understanding
Actually,
the truth of realities.
Actually, what I'm trying to say, it's not thinking in terms of situations, rather than thinking in terms of situations, or even coming to a conclusion that with understanding we'll be in a better position to help others, help oneself. Even that is wrong. It's now what's real, that's to be understood. That's it.
Right. It's always back to now. It's always back to this moment. But I think also that the more understanding there is now and the more confidence, the less one thinks about what should I do in this or that situation, because there's more understanding that what arises is conditioned, and that understanding conditions more kusala anyway, more metta, more understanding of the difficulties of others and so on. But whatever the timing or whatever the situation, it is the understanding of what is real right now that is the answer, the solution to all problems.
That's where the confidence comes in. I mean,
yes. Because there's more and more confidence that there's no other way at all. We keep thinking about, well, what will happen in the future, or what about what happened yesterday, or how could I help better? But life is just at this moment only. That's it.
My sister's answer to the problem of her daughter was she is still missing him. So missing a person, we can try, maybe there are conditions to help people. What is the meaning of when you miss someone by death or separation, or what is a point for explaining?
And it has to be like that. It can't be any other way. There has to be grief, very strong grief, and life has to be different moments of happiness and sadness and grief. So it can't be any other way, but it doesn't last either. Just like the happiness doesn't last, the grief doesn't last either. So at moments of enjoying the sunrise or pottering in the kitchen when there's no thinking about the loss or the husband, then no grief at those moments. It seems that it lasts, but actually it's just for a moment and it's gone. Whatever arises is gone. And it has to be just the way it's conditioned. No one can stop feeling unhappy. No one can stop having fear or stop having attachment. But it doesn't last. And it's not my grief that is something so special. It's just a common Dharma that is experienced by everyone, but it's gone instantly. And we can see, we can learn, I'm sure she can appreciate that it is the clinging, the attachment that conditions a strong grief. If there's no clinging, no grief, strong attachment, no grief, like someone gets a new pet animal for Christmas and there's so much attachment, and then as soon as the pet is sick, there's so much grief and sadness. So it's the clinging that is conditioned to grief, not the kindness, not the caring, not the compassion, but the clinging each time. And it has to be like that.
Yes, this is a point that Ajahn says that one can consider, is it true or not? And most people, well, they really consider their grief, they can get a little understanding that it is their own clinging to self. I noticed that.
Because they're not so concerned or worried when someone else has a loss, but when it's their own loss, then they're so unhappy. Everyone grieves so much because it's what I am so attached to. So it's my loss that is so special. And this is the Buddha's teaching, that what is clung to brings unhappiness again and again. So clinging is the cause of all difficulties, all disturbances, all problems in life, on and on and on. But when there is clinging, no one minds it because of the pleasant feeling. One just wishes to cling again and again and enjoy it again and again. So one only sees it as a problem when it's lost and gone.
Sarah, some people criticize the Buddha because he abandoned his wife and children to search for the truth. How would you answer that criticism?
Sooner or later, everything has to be given up in life. Whatever is dear to one, one's family, one's home, everything has to be given up. And even the seeing, the hearing, whatever is dear, whatever is not dear. So the path is the path of relinquishment, the giving up of all conditioned realities.
I suppose there must be.
If one cannot give up one's possessions and one's family members, how can one give up the strong clinging to the idea of self?
Yes. So I think that there has to be different levels of renunciation then, because the Buddha had a much bigger renunciation than we do. But in order to listen to the Dharma, there has to be some degree of renunciation to be able to just consider it. We are renouncing listening to music or pursuing objects of attachment. So different levels of renunciation.
And there has to be the renouncing of taking the wife, the children, the home for being something and some people, because in truth, there is no wife, there are no children, there is no home. There are just different realities, different moments of seeing and hardness and hearing and thinking. And there has to be the gradual renouncing through the understanding that whatever has arisen is conditioned and falls away instantly.
Yes, so that's it in absolute terms. A few weeks back you used the term Dharmata, its own way. I just wondered if you could elaborate a bit on
Dhamma,
the meaning of that word.
Dhamma, it's a Pali word, and they often use Dhamma in Thai, but the Pali word it just means natural, its own way. It has to be the way it is. So whatever is conditioned is natural, the way it is. There has to be grief because there is attachment. There has to be sadness. There has to be fear. It's a natural way. So trying to make it different, trying not to have grief, trying not to have attachment to family members is not natural, because it's the idea of I changing or controlling or trying to do something.
So that's quite fundamental then to the right development, this idea of it is the way it is by condition.
It has to be the way it is. It can't be any other way. If the conditions for grief, very strong grief, it has to be like that. But whatever arises doesn't last. So rather than trying to stop it or try not to have it, there can be understanding then and there, anytime, that it's just a Dhamma that arises and is gone, not belonging to me.
Thank you.
And when one thinks of the life of the arahats, for whom there's no more sense attachment, impossible for them to live amongst family and friends and the kind of lifestyle we live, because of the purity of the citta and the great enunciation through the development of understanding, through the lack of clinging to any sense objects.
Thank you.
Alan, on your question about the Buddha leaving his family, it's the way not only those people who don't think, who have not heard the Dhamma, even us who have heard the Dhamma, we still have this habit of thinking in terms of situations. So people who have not heard would think that the Buddha leaving his family was being cruel or unfair to his family, to his wife, his kids. What they don't understand and what we sometimes forget is that the Buddha, the value of the Dhamma is the understanding of what's real now. So in that context, the Buddha saw the danger of attachment and he saw the value of understanding. So it was not about situations, leaving this and that. It's about just whatever was conditioned to happen. Having seen the danger of sensuous attachment and seeing the value of understanding the truth, that's what he did, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I think I was asked this question, and my reply was that yes, he actually came back to his wife and children and taught them what he had learned, and his son could have no more mental grief after the age of 20 because he was an arahat. So actually, he didn't abandon his wife and children because they learnt from him the highest truth. So it's everybody else who abandons perhaps their children. So yes, yeah, very important.
If it is us doing that, then you can conclude it's abandoning, but not for the Bodhisattva. It wouldn't be.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Thank
also,
you.
Buddha wasn't yet a Buddha when he left his children.
Yes, that's an important point, because actually the Bodhisattva did, he did kill, he did steal, he did everything that I've read in the Jatakas, that actually he broke all of the training rules except one, which was lying. So over the millions of years he was a Bodhisattva, he never lied. But yes, he committed adultery, he stole, he did all of those things, but actually he never lied. So in that last life, yes, he was not Buddha. It wasn't the Buddha who left his family. It was just an ordinary person. Yeah.
No, but he
Yes,
was
good.
Bodhisattva. Chanti, you must understand that in the case of the Buddha leaving his family, could not have been a kusala.
Yes, that moment, yes.
Could not have been a kusala.
No, no. But he was, he would have had lots of akusala because he was Bodhisattva. But that moment, that's renunciation.
Yeah, that's renunciation. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's a good point as well. Thank you. The kusala or kusala at the moment. The intention.
Because lots of ordinary people leave their wives and family to do good. For example, I know that there's a story about the firemen, the London firemen. They leave their family maybe for several months to help finding people in earthquakes. They've got specialized equipment, so they do actually leave for a while. So it depends on whether it's kusala or akusala. Yeah, good point.
Alan, Haji just reminded me about in the Bodhisattva's case, what happened was that he saw the 4 signs, the divine messengers. So that was what conditioned his behavior, right? He saw,
Well, the old age.
yeah.
Yeah, but it must have come to a point when the birth of his son, mustn't it? Because he realized it was at that point he left. When he realized, I suppose, that was the final, that he needed to go at that point, at the birth of his son. Otherwise, maybe never go. I don't know, but yeah.
Did I understand he called his son Fetter?
Yes, Rahula means bond, I think, doesn't it? Yes, bond. So even then, yeah, even having the son, he appreciated what it was. Yeah. I called my son James, middle name James, as in James Bond. I wanted to call him Rahula, but that didn't go down very well with my partner.
We're talking now about the Buddha. Is it not wise to, while we're talking about the Buddha, realizing that we are talking about Panya rather than the Buddha?
It can be synonymous. Buddha means Panya.
Yes, I understand, but while we're talking about the Buddha, it's very easy to be deluded about the Buddha being a person.
But it's
so we
also
think about the Buddha being a person, being a bodhisattva, being like an entity.
But it's also,
and at the same time, when we talk about it, I realize sometimes that the Buddha wasn't the Buddha. There was no Buddha. There was no bodhisattva. So it's just Panya.
yeah, but there is a level of Panya that particular only to one being. That's Buddha, only one Buddha, and the Bodhisattva too is a level of Panya. So they can be said with understanding, but to point out particular dhammas, particular levels of Panya.
True, but there is no Buddha and there is no bodhisattva.
But they are realities.
The Buddha?
There are realities. There are levels of Panya.
Yes, but there is no Buddha.
But there are khandhas as well. The 5 khandhas. What we use the word Buddha to denote those 5 khandhas. Yes, and the Buddha. What is different about the Buddha is the understanding, which itself is not a Buddha for sure. But there are those khandhas which we use the conventional term Buddha or Bodhisattva.
Yes, I understand, but
Yeah.
when I'm listening to stories about the Buddha and the Bodhisattva, I find I am also deluded in seeing it is a person. So if I'm not realizing it is just Panya, it's just realities arising and falling away all the time, like we said before. I think I cling to the person, the Buddha, and it's
yes.
really, and it is really without understanding that. So it's very easy to cling to the Buddha, to cling to the Bodhisattva, to cling.
Yes, yes,
And
because we cling to ourselves.
Right.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
if,
we cling to ourselves, so
I,
we still cling to others. Yeah, for sure.
and if I realize it's just the rising and passing away of realities, no Buddha, no Bodhisattva, I listen to it in a different way. That's
Yes, yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah. We can get carried away with these ideas of the Buddha and the Bodhisattva and forget about the realities which are not people or things.
And I suppose it's clinging to the desire to get rid of the suffering, something like that, or the desire to be someone, to desire to be a Buddha ourselves, or things like that. In my case.
Yes, the commentary elaborates a little on this. Buddha, it's not a name made by father or mother, but to speak about the reality, like you say, the panya.
And when we read a story like the one about giving away the family and the children, actually it's really about, as Marga stressed, showing the great panya that is being accumulated and the great nekama parami and dana parami and all the paramis that have to be accumulated to such a high degree in order for the panya to be accumulated ready for enlightenment in the final life. So we're actually talking about different realities, no matter how the story is read or understood. And that's why it's so difficult for us to appreciate, because we think in terms of the situations, but actually it's referring to the great accumulation of the paramis with understanding enough to relinquish clinging to whatever there is in life. And in order to be ready to become a Buddha, then the accumulation of those paramis has to be the highest level and to have been accumulated over the longest period of time, quite different than for other enlightened beings. So it's actually the account of the different accumulation of great kusala. I think it's good points that you're making, Mark. Shanti, did you want to bring up anything further with Ajahn about those comments about the eyes closed, or everything was, or you're happy with everything as we discussed it?
No, I followed your link. Thank you very much. It's a useful post, and I saw many, and I just opened one, and one was enough. Not to pinpoint. It was about the breath, actually. Of course, there's lots of well, let's say beginner thoughts I'm running into, because I do understand that it's important to distinguish nama, rupa, and concepts. So I have to, not me, but the characteristics about it are important to realize in this moment. So I do have to study and read from the wisdom of others. On the other hand, I shouldn't go too far into it. So that's tricky. But I was just thinking, what is the breath? Not thinking, but trying to distinguish Dhamma, Rupa, and concept. And already I read in a post there was too much trying there, just to figure out what the breath is too much trying. So that's still kind of a vague territory for me. On one side, there's interest. I think it's kusala, to know reality. Yeah, so that's maybe the thing. And things came up like with breath that I know so little of it, although there's been lots of meditation before on the breath. And it's perplexing, actually, how much delusion. And I couldn't find anything that the breath was, only maybe impressions like hardness or cold or warm sometimes, or and I noticed the movement impression was concept, and something else. Yes, I was very interested about, it seemed like sometimes I tasted or smelled more than breathing. And so the conclusion was there's so little understanding. And I was happy to read that breath is a very subtle thing that maybe is too hard to understand for normal lay people. And yet I did have a little question from this. Why is sound not an aviniboga rupa? Well, that's my story.
I think there are two different points. So the first is on breath. So maybe we discuss that first and then afterwards come back to sound, which is another topic. I just checked with Ajahn if she could follow. Ajahn, could you follow what Chanti was mentioning about breath? Yes.
She would like to know about breath, is that right?
Yes.
Is it now appearing?
It's appearing as a nimitta, so it's not appearing.
I mean just breath. Does it appear as the object which is seen now appear?
No.
See, that's right. Just thinking about the other thing, no understanding of that which is now appearing. So how can there be the understanding of what you are interested? Because it's just exactly the same, but we don't know. That's why we learn to understand the absolute truth of what is that. No matter it's called breath or shoes or whatever, what is the truth of breath? Is it a reality? Is it clear? And does it appear now?
No, but I used to think it was, so that's the difference. I used to think it was real.
Okay, now, is it there real? Or just think about it?
Thinking about it.
Can there be the understanding of the absolute truth by just thinking about when it does not appear to be known as it is? But when there is the understanding, even breath is now appearing, there can be the understanding of breath. That's why, first of all, what is breath? Is it real? Otherwise, we just talk about the story of breath. Is it real? And what is it? To know when it's there, to be known as it is. Without understanding right now, it's impossible to understand even at that moment breath appears.
Yes, but
just like now, when we Yes, please.
Sorry, excuse me. When hardness, there's confidence that it's real, but with breath, there's very little confidence when I know it's thinking about breath.
Without thinking, can there be a moment of hardness appearing?
Yes,
Why?
I don't know. It's just different.
By
It's just,
conditions. That's why we call it Dhamma, Anatta, no one there at all. But what is there is conditioned to arise to be just Dhammata, as we just talked about, the way it is. The way it is. Who can change, who can make it different, just in a split seconds and then gone. To be understood that it's not permanent at all, no matter what. This is the point which is very important, because we cling to something because of remembering or thinking that it's still there. But in truth, it's gone absolutely, never to return, whatever is now appearing. That's why to understand what are there in life, to understand that actually there cannot be I at all, no matter when and where. At moment of seeing is conditioned just to be that which experiences what is seen, that's all, and then gone. So breath cannot experience anything at all. It's there. But what is it when it's there? It can be touched only. Can breath be seen or be heard? When it's heard, it's not breath. It's another reality which can be heard, not can be touched at all. We learn to understand what is there in truth, absolute truth in life. Otherwise, there are moments of ignorance and attachment to what is there as something all the time. But in truth, it cannot be there. Just appear and disappear instantly in life. We can understand this very moment. At moment of seeing, is there anybody sitting or standing or breath at moment of seeing?
no,
No. So who can change the way Dhammada, the way it is? Without the seeing, can that which is seen appear? Impossible. So different world, the world of sight, the world of sound, the world of smell, and so on. But arising and falling away in split second. So what is known is something by shape and form of the nimitta, which is left from the succession of that which arises and falls away in split seconds. That's all. No matter in this world or any world, no one can change the dhammata at all. Dhamma and ta, the way it is. That's why breath is just that which cannot experience anything. And when it's touched at the nostril or wherever, upper lip and so on, when it's there, it's just hardness or softness, heat or cold, pressure or motion. That's all. So very, very rapidly. That's why it cannot stay long to be known. Just understanding that is so short, but sanya, memory, marks and remembers as its breath, different from other reality, which is experienced by different doorways. That's all. It's a reality which cannot experience anything. And when it's experienced, it's gone instantly, just like any object, any reality arising and falling away so very rapidly. That's all. Is that not true?
yes,
So learn to understand the truth. That's the way Dhammata. No one there to hurry up to know the truth. It's impossible because ignorance is there from years and years ago. So right understanding begins to understand how enormous ignorance and attachment and the wrong understanding of self is there. Just hearing about it cannot let go the idea of self, because it has been accumulated quite a long time. But when there is a moment of understanding, it's different from moment of ignorance, not understanding the truth at all. That's why the development of right understanding only can let go little by little the wrong understanding of taking what is there as permanent thing, as something. Otherwise, there's no way to realize the truth, because the truth of whatever arises and falls away is so very subtle. Seeing right now, uncountable moment before it can be formed up as something like a doll, a shoe, the curtain, the bed, and on, all the time. That's why just develop right understanding to understand the truth, and to understand more and more is no one, it's a function of panya, right understanding, which can develop to understand now that actually what is taken for self or thing, there must be the absolute reality, and one arises to experience and the other arises but cannot experience anything at all. Only that different quality, different characteristic, different idea about each one right now as it is. What is the best gift you'd like from the Buddha or anyone?
Panya.
Right. See, only Panya. So the Bodhisattva left his family to have Panya, the best gift for everyone, including his family.
Yes. I guess it's very groundless at this stage that there's more and more seeing how much ignorance there is, and it's very unstable to understand when there's thinking about. And so when there's this understanding how much ignorance there is, there's doubting the experience of the senses now. Like, it's, for some senses it's more obvious, like seeing, there's confidence, but with sound there's doubt, the same as breath, like, well, maybe I only think sound is real. Do you understand?
Yes, it's real, but just for a very short moment. It's not there when it's quiet. No one speaks at all. No sound. So how comes sound? There must be condition for sound to arise too. Everything depends on its proper conditions to be just as it is. Even right understanding.
Isn't stillness also on the continuum of sound?
Yes, because only just that which impinges on the ear base arises and falls away. Can it be known? So very shortly. See, when you hear something, it's not just a very tiny moment of experience, it's that the sound of a dog barking, the sound of music. See, not just only one moment, tiny moment. So only one moment experiences an object. Those cannot be known, neither the experience of the object. Because as soon as one opens one's eye, so many things around. Is it true? Just close one's eye. Where are they? Just to know that only one object which impinges on the eye base to condition the moment of realizing the object as seen is very short.
Yes.
We can broken down everything into very, very tiny particle, is it still that object? So before it can be such a little thing, it has to be many moments of experiencing very tiny particle. And it's not there, but the succession of the rapidity of experiencing can form up the idea of nimitta, shape and form, and Panyati, make it known as something by its nimitta, shape and form. That's all. But the truth is that it's not there at all anymore.
Mhm.
So how much ignorance is there? To study, to have confidence, to be directly understanding what is there now, as usual, when there's no understanding. But when there is understanding, it just experiences the same characteristic of hardness through the body sense. But there is a little understanding of that nature, as it's only that hardness is taken from breath, but in truth it's hard or cold, soft or hard, pressure or motion, only that, see, in truth, and gone. It cannot last at all. So we just remember and think and take it for breath. But in truth, it's no more there. And this is the only way to let go what is taken for something. Otherwise, there cannot be the understanding of that which is now arising and falling away one by one. And what is meant by just one by one is quite far from this moment, because so many things now in a moment, but when it's just one in a moment, it is not just like now. And what is true? Only the confidence of the truth, which it is one moment of experiencing an object and then gone by conditions. What object would be? Uncontrollable, no expectation. But when there's no right understanding, no thought about an expectation, who knows what would be next moment? Impossible. So it depends on conditions. Each moment in life, no matter what life, the fish, the monkey, human being, the worm, and so on. The experiencing cannot be any form of anything. It just arises and no form and no shape at all. That is the realization of the reality which arises and experience an object by conditions and then gone. No one, no thing. And that can be directly experienced with right understanding enough to let go doubt and clinging and taking it for something. Still remember that it's my hand, my leg, my face, and so on. Actually, even right now, does it appear? The nail, the toe? At all. Not at all. Only that which appears when it's touched is what is there. We take for the body, the hand, the leg, the toe, the face, see, everything is taken when it's not there. Sanya, marks and remember as permanent reality. Even it's not there, it remembers as it's still there. As long as it's just like that, how can it directly experience what is there with right understanding of the truth of it? Dhammata. It's the way it is. So what is breath now? A reality. Can it be seen? Can it be heard? When it's heard, it's not breath. When it's seen, it's not breath. But we remember that it's the sound of breath. And can breath be seen? Impossible. Can it be smelled? And what is the smell? And what is there as a smell? As what is there at moment of breathing. So how come to be breathing? And what is meant by breathing? Without citta, can there be any kind of moment of breath? Not at all. So we think that we are breathing. What about being when it's fast asleep? Nothing appears at all. Is there breathing? What condition it? This is to understand the way it is, as it cannot be taken for anything or self at all. It's as it is by conditions.
And I think the point that you touched on right at the beginning, Chanti, that you've been reading about in the messages is that it's just a reality like any other reality of no particular importance that arises and falls away. And as soon as there's any attempt to be aware or to understand reality, then understand that breath or to catch that breath, then it's clinging. It's not anything to do with understanding. So I think that's the main point, because the letting go means understanding that which appears, not a particular object that one would like to be aware of. So that was the first point. And on the topic of sound that you mentioned, so there are two conditions for sound. One is when speaking now, the citta conditions that rupa, the rupa of sound. But when there is no speaking, no muttering, anything, citta doesn't condition sound. And the other condition for sound is temperature. So sound arises conditioned by temperature, but if temperature doesn't condition sound, then no sound. So whereas the 8 Vinibhoga rupas you mentioned, the 8 rupas that arise in every kalapa are conditioned in every group of rupas, sound is not one of them. Sound is only conditioned at moments of speaking or when temperature conditions it in that group of rupas. Whereas, for example, nutriment arises in every group of rupas, like in the table, every rupa that makes up what we call the table is nutriment for insects or something, but not sound. Sound is not in every group of rupas in the table, for example.
Thank you. And Sujin, also thank you. Yes, it's very helpful to remember that reality is very, very, very short. And it's still astounding and difficult that things that seem to be so normal in daily life, like breathing and hearing, I know nothing about. And
what we take for being breathing is not any understanding of the reality of breath, just like what we take for seeing or hearing is not the reality of seeing or hearing.
Yes, and the taking for and the thinking of, I'm still discovering a lot, and when it's happening, and it's, I guess, the love of truth that keeps me going, because each time when I take a topic like this, well, it should be easy. It's not easy at all. Well, thank you very much.
I have a question regarding visible object. And my question is visible object, well, visible object is arising and falling away all the time. Is visible object touching pasada, the pasada rupa, but without seeing? Is that clear? Is my question clear? Like, can visible object arise and touch the rupa, the chakra pasada, but not have citta arise? That's my question.
Can that be known?
Well, that's a good question, Achan. I guess not, because if there's no seeing, then there's no knowing whether it's touching pasada rupa or not.
And who knows?
Maybe the Buddha knows.
He knew everything. He has enlightened the absolute truth of everything. But he taught what can be known. He didn't say about that to be studied, but what about that which is now can be known, can be studied to understand the truth because it's there. So we don't waste time thinking about that which does not appear. Otherwise, we just keep on thinking about that. No attention to what is there at all. Keep on going on the other story about this and that. Is known as it is? No thought about those which arises and falls away. And what did Buddha thought about it?
Well, as you say, Ajahn, the Buddha taught to us that which can be known. And he did say that what he was teaching, he took a handful of leaves from the forest and said, this is what I teach you. But all of the other leaves in the forest is what he knew, and which was not necessary for beings to know to eventually attain enlightenment. So thank you, Ajahn, for that reminder.
So what can be known is this very moment.
And can only be known by wisdom, great wisdom, panya.
And how can this moment be realized as it is? Is there any way?
Well, by listening to what the Buddha taught, by reviewing what was taught, and by the development of wisdom.
a little more of understanding its nature or its truth.
And
Only
that, yeah, that can only be done slowly, slowly.
can there be attention on it?
Attention on the object, is that what you're asking, Ajahn?
Yes. Can it be in a day?
There can be, yes.
Yes, but it depends on whether it's with attachment and ignorance or with right understanding. Right?
Right.
That's why it should be known about its nature as it is. Different things, different reality. Ignorance cannot be understanding.
They can't be separated. Sound can be separated.
Sundara, are you trying to speak? Because we can hear your voice.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, maybe you could turn your speaker off.
There you go. I'm trying to do it now.
Does anyone else have any topic they'd like to bring up or any question? Jyotika, anything that you're wondering about?
Okay, if no one's asking,
I think, Sukin, I think Jyotika's trying to talk. We can't hear you, Jyotika.
Yes, I have. Last week there was a speaking about Chitta and Chittasikas, and that they have different functions I never knew before. And I am wondering if I heard it right, if I understood it right, that the Chitta is the leader and the Chittasikas, they are necessary for the Chitta. But that the Chittasikas have their own function, or I thought I understood a bit when I heard that Ajahn said there is feeling and there is recognition. Then I saw different things, but I would like to have a bit more explanation.
I think what you heard is correct. So at any moment in life, Chitta is the leader in experiencing, and it is the reality that is pure Pandara, and it just experiences the object. So at a moment of seeing just sees what is visible. It doesn't feel anything, it doesn't remember anything, it doesn't contact anything. It just has the function of being the chief in experiencing the object. And it's exactly the same for every other citta in life. And each of those citta seekers that accompanies it has its particular function. So the passa contacts the object in order for the citta to see it. The sanya marks and remembers it. The ekagata focuses on the object, so only that object is experienced. The manasikara tends to it. So each citta seeker has its particular function when it arises. And as you know, there have to be at least 7 citta seekers, and usually many more. At moments of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, just 7 citta seekers are needed, but each has its particular function, and they have to accompany and associate with the citta, and they condition each other to work as a team to experience the object, arising together, falling away together at each moment in life.
And this all happens, all these functions, all happens in this one moment.
Split second, right? Split moment. So at the moment of the citta experiences the object, they all arise together. The passa, the feeling, everything arises together, experiences exactly the same object, and they all fall away together.
And is it an all right to, till now I thought that, for example, that when Loba is there, that Loba colors the whole thing. That the
Right.
that whole happening is Loba.
So only the loba is attached, but all the citta seekers and the citta, they all condition each other. So the passa, the contact that arises with loba, or the concentration that arises with loba, is different from the contact or the concentration that arises with kusala cittas. When there is panya, it also colors, if you like, the citta and the citta seekers. So they all color each other, they all condition each other by association condition.
But they all have a color, so then you have a lot of colors.
They all have a function and they all condition each other, but only loba is attached. Only chanda takes an interest in the object. Only dosa is averse to the object. Only vedana feels the object. So they all have their particular functions, but they condition each other. They affect each other.
And they all together have the object. Good.
They all experience exactly the same object, and they all fall away. And then the next citta that arises with its associated citta seekers all experience the same object again, and then they fall away. And it's like that from the first moment of life to the last moment of life.
And it is much a question of believing it. It is experiencing, but how can you experience this?
Well, I think that at the moment of attachment, the experiencing is different from at a moment when there is aversion. The moment of seeing, the experiencing is different from the moment of hearing. The object experienced is different, and the nature of the citta is different. And when there is understanding, for example, the nature of the other citta seekers are different from moments when there are attachment. When there's attachment, there's disturbance at those moments, restlessness. At moments when there is understanding, the citta is calm. There's no thought of I or my problems or anything else at those moments of understanding. The citta is calm. At moments of kindness, there is no clinging at those moments. So there can be a little bit of understanding, and they're just different realities that arise by their conditions and fall away.
Yeah, it's different.
And the reason we learn about these details, even though they're not directly known, is to begin to understand now that there are just these different kinds of chittas and chaitasikas arising and falling away. So how can it be my panya or my great worry or my disturbance? Because they're just different realities in life that arise and fall away and don't last for a moment. It can be proved that moments of kindness, there's no worry about my daughter or anything else, because at the moments of kindness, one has the other's welfare at heart at those moments. There's no thought about my problem or me at all. So they're just different realities that arise by conditions and fall away.
I'm learning about that. I had a very little experience, but a very important with the sentence, letting rights, understanding, take care of itself.
Right. Yeah. It's an important point, letting right understanding itself take care of itself. It just means let it develop when there are conditions. Nothing I can do. I can't make understanding arise. I can't hasten it. I can't make it a different level to how it is, because there's no I to do anything. So it just means Dhamma, let it arise as it will. If there is attachment, it's conditioned that way. It's Dhamma also. So whatever arises has to be the way it is by conditions. As soon as there's the trying to have more understanding, trying to be aware, trying to have more metta, trying not to worry or get upset, then the obstacle of I, the clinging to the idea of I, makes life harder and harder and harder.
It's true. It's true. That was the experience. I felt like if for a moment I knew how it could be when this is true for you, when it becomes true, like letting right understanding take care of itself. So
Right. Let it work its way. Yeah, it's the opposite to trying to focus on the breath or trying to have metta meditation or trying to be aware. This is the biggest hindrance to the development of understanding. It's the wrong path that the Buddha talked about.
Also, Jyotika, whatever level of understanding arises depends on the accumulations. So if the accumulations is so much, it's that level of panya that's going to arise, not more, right? So it has to develop, it has to grow on its own.
yes, but you cannot. It seems that they come from an enormous world of doing, and this is the thing. What is this changing is not doing. When I was sitting quiet, and there was quite a focus when this happened, to see or to experience, and then I felt just that I had to do something to to keep it. Maybe there was also that longing to keep it, but that doesn't work. That is not. I felt it's not the right thing. You cannot do anything if just letting be this just understanding taking care of itself. Maybe it's strange.
And isn't it a great relief to not have to try to do anything and not to focus on anything, or not to mind if there's a little or a lot of understanding or no understanding?
But I can hardly believe it. I can hardly believe that it is true.
You can experience. You can experience
Yeah.
that it is true, that it's impossible to do anything because the Chitas take their own course, and the Spaniard takes its own course. But to accept it maybe, because we are so used to doing exercises, doing this or that.
Yeah. Of to focus or to bring in or something, but
Yeah.
not doing anything. It's like, yeah.
Many teachers say that we do have to do this or that and to try, but then we can find out that it doesn't work.
Could I just pop in a question there? Maybe there's advice not, well, for me personally, it's confusing to read the suttas. Because, for example, now I remember that the Buddha, maybe the last words was, were strive on with diligence and things like that. And it's so, for this beginner mind, so hard to understand it the right way.
Oh, that happens many times when we read the suttas and the Buddha speaks in conventional terms to help people, because he also uses conventional terms. But we always have to know the difference between conventional notions and absolute realities. So it's really pointing to absolute realities all the time. That's why we learn about the different processes of Chitas, the experience, objects, so sense doors and mind door, just to know that there is no self at all that can direct or control Chitas. They have their own conditions.
And how should strive with diligence? How should that be understood?
That's the other side, yeah.
I think that what Nina was just saying can also be understood this way, Chanti, that whenever we read something in the suttas, it has to be understood in the context of everything else in the suttas, because there is consistency throughout. So if we just take a passage like the one you quoted and consider it on its own, then we'll come away with an interpretation that is different if one considers it in the context of his teaching on not self and the conditioned nature of realities and everything else that we find in the suttas. So, as Nina said, sometimes the language used is rather conventional. When he talks about effort or energy, for example, or concentration or these things, they are spoken of in a way that can be read as meaning by will, doing things by will. But we also know that that is not the true meaning of his general message throughout. So that is why it needs careful consideration. And to comment on Mark's question or comment, how is it to be understood? Strive with diligence means there has to be, I think diligence is not, I'm not sure if diligence is quite the right word, but the Pali term there, I think, means without being neglectful. So it is the apamada that is the focus of that statement rather than the striving. So one has to not be that neglectful of the present moment reality. It's another term for, as I understand it, for having awareness. And even the term awareness, sati, when one hears it as a newcomer, one thinks of being aware, having awareness, and that sort of thing. And yet we come to appreciate that it's a mental factor that arises by conditions with wholesome chittas only. And so it's not something that can be made to happen. And while I'm speaking, and one other comment that Shanti raised, I think was a good point. How do we know the sound is real? I think was your question. In other words, can it also be imaginary? I think was the point you were raising, Shanti. So let's consider that. If sound is sound imaginary? If sound was imaginary, then each person would imagine sound according to their own imagination. So there wouldn't be any consistency in what people hear. But if everyone agrees that this is the sound of someone speaking and the words are this, the meaning is that, or this is the sound of a bell, that is the sound of a motor car, if there's general agreement on that, it tends to suggest, I think, that it's not a matter of imagination, because imagination would be a very individual thing. So just something to consider. The difference between what is real and has a characteristic that can be known, that doesn't change. For example, attachment, liking, dislike, fear, and so on. The same question applies to any reality, doesn't it? Not just sound. It applies to any so-called reality.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Can you, if I go back to the Buddha saying, strive with diligence, can you understand it this way that when the Buddha is saying that, he is reminding us to appreciate awareness and wisdom? That's the reason why it is said. Can you?
Yes.
The
Right.
importance of
so.
understanding and awareness, yes.
Yeah, right.
Quite so.
And that's why, like I mentioned to Jyotika, we read about different chittas and different citta seekers performing their different functions to understand that there really is no one there. At each moment in life, there are just chittas and citta seekers arising and falling away. And if this isn't appreciated, whatever we read is going to be read with the wrong idea of self. But the more understanding there is of different realities, different dhammas arising by different conditions, such as the hearing and sound, which Chanti mentioned, then the more confidence there is that there is no one there that hears, no one that is aware, no one that can do anything,
Yes,
no matter what is read.
The thing which is difficult is that if the Buddha says strive for diligence, it is there seems to be force in that advice, and it seems strive, diligence is seems to be advising to do something with force. And if I understand it in a different way, like the Buddha saying, is reminding us to appreciate awareness and wisdom, it is much more letting go. So I wonder, why do I understand the meaning of strive with diligence wrongly if I hear the force in it, or is it a wrong translation? Or
I think it's like the fire on one's head. He taught that all dhammas are anatta, whatever is conditioned is anatta. And he also stressed that life is just this moment. if there's no understanding and awareness now, then when? So this is the urgency, the value of developing understanding, because death can come anytime, but at the same time appreciating its condition. No one can make it arise. And yet, as Ajahn always stresses, it's the most precious thing in life. So it's a reminder, a condition to appreciate the value and the importance of understanding right now of what appears at this moment.
So can you say that the strength in the words strive and diligence is pointing to the preciousness of the wisdom and awareness?
At this moment, yes.
At this moment.
And because, Mark, otherwise they're striving with akusala all the time.
Yes, I understand, yes. But it's like in the Satipatthana Sutta, it's also said that there has to be atapi. So that throughout the suttas, and I think also in the Abhidhamma, there are words which points to a certain kind of force, which seems to be seems to connect to lower to me, or dosa, but it's not. So it's hard to.
Virya, like the atapi, it's the
Yes,
virya that
right.
has to arise with panya, because there's virya arising with almost every citta, including every akusala citta. So this is pointing to the kusala virya that has to develop together with panya to be a parami and a support and a path factor with the development of right understanding. So it's not referring to the effort when one tries to be aware of breath, or the great effort trying to have more metta. It's referring to the kusala virya.
It's always
development of understanding. Yes.
So it's always when I'm reading or hearing about anything the Buddha said, it's always, I can only hear it in the right way if I appreciate anatta, if I can.
Right. The understanding of reality
listening
now
with the
as
understanding
anatta.
of anatta, and then
Yes.
then I can understand what is said.
Right.
But if
So this is why whatever the
if
Buddha
they-
taught about, it's about dhammas that are anatta.
right.
Very good point.
And
Because unhappy, not neglectful, is always together with sampajanya, panya, and satima. So
Right.
atati, sampajanya, satima, these three together.
And also, we were talking earlier about understanding things in the context of the rest of the Tipitaka. This little passage about striving with diligence is actually the second part of what the Buddha said. He said two things at that time. And the first one was that all formations are liable to decay or to vanish. All sankhara are liable or bound to vanish. And then comes the part about striving with diligence. So the first part makes the point that all conditioned realities rise and fall away by their nature. And any striving or idea of striving or diligence, it also refers to dhammas, that conditioned realities that arise and fall away momentarily. So there is context there to appreciate the true meaning, the underlying meaning of the striving with diligence.
Yes.
That's why each word has to be considered so carefully and understood as.
Can I read
Yes.
something from Nina's book about this? It says, about the virya, maybe it helps in Mark the striving bit. We need courage, virya, as not to become downhearted, but continue on the right way of development. We need dana, generosity, so that we are not self-centered all the time, thinking of our own pleasure. We need determination, aditana, to continue on and on, considering the reality appearing now. Whatever difficult situations we have to face, since we see the benefit of right understanding. We need truthfulness, sincerity. To what extent there is panya, and to what extent there's still ignorance. So that does take energy.
We should not neglect all the paramis or perfections, but it's not we, of course, no person. So like Mark said, whatever we read, we never should forget anatta, or no self. Good remark, good reminder. Because it's not a perfection when there is still an idea of self. Then it's not a perfection, all these good qualities.
Striving with the idea of self can never ever lead to being a parami and can never lead to the right path.
Yeah, right.
Of course, I think also the emphasis, as I said earlier, is on the diligence part rather than the striving, because striving is what his followers were already doing. They were developing the path that he had taught. So he was speaking to people who were already developing the path. And the point is for not to be neglectful, as I think Nina just said, or not to be neglectful of the reality that is appearing at the present moment. So with awareness and understanding. He didn't have to tell them they needed to strive. They appreciated the importance of developing the path already.
And Mark, yeah, what Jonathan was talking about before with why Dhamma Sankara, as he said, was all Dhammas perish. These are the famous last words of the Buddha, Vaya Dhamma Sankara, or Handadani Bhikkhue, well then, O bhikkhus, Vaya Dhamma Sankara, all Dhammas perish, apamadena sampadeta. Now that word sampadeta, apamadena means, obviously we're often very familiar with this in different ways. The word is, sometimes the root of that word is mud, it's literally to be mad, and that can be taken literally if you like. Appama means not to be neglectful. It's sometimes translated as not to be neglectful. So it's the negative side of it, appamada, as opposed to pamada. Pamada is being very foolish or neglectful or not heedful or any of those kind of words. But the word sampadeti, I've just been thinking about it more. I mean, looking it up too, because the verb really is sampajati. There's nothing about striving really, because the verb sampajati means it's not an easy word to translate, it seems, to turn out, to happen, to succeed, to prosper. So the Buddha, it seems to me, there is encouraging people to prosper with not being neglectful. So perhaps the word strive there, usually the word strive is wayamati, with energy, but that word's not used there. It's sampadeta. As I said, the verb is sampajati, which means to succeed with and being non-neglectful of the Dhammas that appear. So I think it's kind of an awkward translation, I'll put it that way, of that word, of the verb sampajati, as I said, which means to succeed in or to obtain, which has a different take on it than that concept of, striving, when we're usually the Pali word we think about there would be waiamati, which obviously relates to energy.
Yes, and I suppose that's when I read the suttas, I always read it in Dutch or in English, and I understand that I also read the words of the translator and not so much of the Buddha.
Yeah, that's right, and it's not difficult. And even any language, in any language, there are words which, if you take them literally, they would sound rather awkward. I'm just trying to think of some sayings that we perhaps have in English, like if you lie down with dogs, you get fleas. It's perhaps not such a good example, but I'm trying to think of something that it doesn't mean to say you should lie down with dogs. And to get fleas. It's not saying that. It's telling you that be careful what you do, because if you make, you have to think about that saying, and sometimes they can be misinterpreted by people who read them. In any language, you have sayings that can be misinterpreted. And going back to perhaps what the others were saying also is this aspect of context. Ajahn is always saying that very famous saying, Sabbe Dhamma Anatta. That's really the core of the Dhamma. And if you put that very famous conjunction that everyone knows about, which often don't, and people don't think of the import and how important that word Sabbe Dhamma Anatta is, and what that means in the context of Dhamma. Because we're so used to thinking of, putting forth energy or doing something, but we know ultimately that Dhammas are conditioned, and it takes, time and careful consideration to begin to put the puzzle together in a way and see that really it's not about striving in that sense that we know it, but we have to understand it in the context of what is meant. Rather than, and sometimes I do sympathize with translators, when you read certain things. That's why I think it's good to, if you can, to look at the Pali of it, and it can help you to unpick what the difficulty the translator may have with that word. And so they use the word strive. Well, yeah, you can use that word, but even in this context, it doesn't seem very appropriate to me. But how would we say it otherwise? To succeed with neglectfulness. It sounds rather awkward, but if you can slowly unpick that, you can see it means to learn to be successful in being non-neglectful. And that sounds a bit awkward too. So they pick that word strive, and that, as I think you've mentioned too there, Mark, will reflect sometimes the understanding of the translator. It's difficult sometimes. What would you put there? For that word? Well, yeah, so they've used the word strive, but it's not particularly helpful now I think about it more.
Thank you.
No, I appreciate your question too, because I've never really thought about that, never thought about it too much before, but it's helpful because I've, going and looking it up and considering it more carefully, and I can see the difficulties that the translator may have, and especially if one hasn't got the understanding. I think it's always good to reflect back to that aspect that, Sabbe Dhamma and Anattati, thus all Dhammas are not self. So how do we interpret that in relationship to any aspect of Dhamma that we consider? What are the implications of that Sabbe Dhamma Anatta, that all Dhammas are Anatta? How is that negotiated in a way in the context of Dhamma? And it's good to consider it very carefully. If we're not, then we can, easily misunderstand. So I appreciate that, bringing up that point.
I'm just looking at a collection of different translations of that particular set of words, and a number of them use strive, but of those that use something else, we have persist, and also bring about completion by being heedful, or strive to attain the goal by diligence. And some of those give the connotation of success, or that Sundara just mentioned.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's quite a good one, actually. I think, Jonathan, because it relates to the obtaining of something by way of understanding. Obviously, there was one that you said there that I thought really fitted the picture. What they again, Jonathan?
Bring
please?
about completion.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, bring about completion. To be obtained, fall into one's own possession, sort of. So, and it's difficult to convey that verb, that Pali verb, into English in the context of what the Buddha was talking about there. So, to fall into one's possession. Well, yeah. And then, of course, it's very useful to see where that word is used in different contexts. It is used, I'm just trying to remember some examples where that verb is used, sampajjati. So when we say in a tribute to the Sangha, you say sampanno. There it's in a different grammatical term, but it's.
I think the main point is that it's referring to the development of the path.
Yeah, sure.
Which the listeners were already undertaking. But to his followers, he said, "Well, keep going as you are, with diligence."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. That's
till the goal is reached.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So I don't know. I don't think the word striving there is appropriate. But as Jonathan was alluding to, it's about understanding. The bhikkhus, obviously, at the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, or where that was mentioned, they understood, and they would have understood that very clearly. Yeah.
That's why Jyotica's question about cetasikas was important. Not to forget all the different functions of the cetasikas that arise together with the citta, so that we better understand that there is no self and no striving, and then we can see them in the right context.
And
That's
also,
very nice of Sundara. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I just wanted to say also we must remember that until one has reached Arahat, we're still got work to do. So long as there's still ignorance, there still needs to be reminders about forgetfulness, danger of forgetfulness.
Yes, I was also, Sundara, thank you for pointing to the verb that what appamada comes from, because I found in the dictionary also something that helps me, that it can also mean to be supplied with. And then I'm thinking of the cetasikas to be supplied with sati and panya. So it's very nice to have a more broad view on the words.
Okay, perhaps you may have slightly misunderstood there. When the Buddha said appamadena, which is it's called the instrumental, it's just by way of being non-neglectful. The verb in that particular sentence, when it says sampadeta is what's called second person. It's like an injunction, second person. This is what is good to do. It's not like, it's a suggestion, or it's sometimes called the imperative case, but it's like, this is what is good to do. Sampadeta, it's the second person plural, but the verb itself, I hope I'm not being too complex, but the verb is sampajjati. That relates to sampadeta, but the verb is sampajjati, which means to, as Jonathan pointed out, to succeed in, or to succeed in, rather than striving. It's to be successful in not being non-neglectful, or pamada. Yeah, and the word, as I said, it's quite interesting that word pamada or pamadena. Pamada literally means to be foolish, to be stupid. Another way to be pamada is like, the root of that word is mud, M-A-D, and it's what it is, muddy. Don't be muddy in your behavior. Have more clarity. Don't be neglectful. So sometimes the roots can be helpful in understanding or unpacking it. But if there's not the understanding of what Ajahn always points to, is that in this particular case, it's Sabbhe Dhamma anatta, and there's no such thing as you can put in effort towards it. I don't know if that's a bit clearer. I hope it is. But it's always good to consider carefully the teachings, especially in the context of Sabbhe Dhamma anattati, that all Dhammas are not self. And so what are the implications of that? And what can be done, inverted commas, in relationship to that when we understand truly what Sabbhe Dhamma anattati means? And it does take time to consider carefully. Just and regarding your question too, like, I don't know if you got Tanajan's book on Paramatta Dhammas. You were asking about Aviniboga Rupas. The Avinibogas are only the ones that cannot be separated. You know, the 8, the 4 Mahabhutas and the 4 Upadaya Rupas. So sound is not amongst those. So and the other 20 are the ones that can be separated in a sense, whereas the other ones, they don't include sound because sound's not part of something that sound is not part of them. Those 8 arise, as Sarah pointed out, those 8 kalapas, they arise in a group and they cannot be separated from, those 8 rupas cannot be separated. And so that's why they're called aviniboga rupas. You know, bhoga just means also that which people seek bhoga. Bhoga is what you are tangible in a way, or touchable, contactable. And that's often what people seek in life. They seek the bhoga. I think there was a sutta which talked about this at another particular time. Anyway, perhaps let's leave it at that.
I think it's about time to finish. So unless anyone has anything else to add briefly, we'll thank Ajahn and everyone. See you all next week.